Hey, what's up, Vince? Cool. Can you hear me?
Hey, how are you?
Hey, pretty good, man. Shoot, I thought I was like for sure not going to get it right. I'm like, the instructions are so simple, only 3 steps, but I will still manage to like mess something up, you know?
That's how that's how computers are.
Yeah, so that's why they need IT professionals like you, man. People like me can exist in this world, you know? Okay,
Sure.
Danny, good to see you. Hope everything's going well. Good to see everyone. Okay, so guys, this is my first time. I've done many podcasts with people before, but this is my first time doing a live with a guest. So one of my former clients, he just actually finished the program. Vince, I'm going to let him do all the talking and take over, and I'll try to be smart by sending out some like sophisticated questions here and there. But basically, I just wanted to kind of share his journey with you guys so you guys can learn some things from his journey that you could easily like probably apply to yourself, because you can learn just from other people, even if you don't take everything away from them, just a few things that could definitely help you in your journey. So a little bit of background, and then I'll let Vince. And Vince, your last name is pronounced Pacella, right?
If we were in Italy, yes, but in America, it's been anglicized to Pacella.
Okay, cool. So a lot more feminine sounding, okay, than Italian. Okay, but I wanted to share Vince's journey with you guys. And he basically at one point was almost like maybe 6 years ago, almost peaking at like 400 pounds. And currently he weighed in at 178 pounds. I didn't help him. We did train together. I didn't help him during the entire journey. I helped him doing kind of like the last maybe like stretch of the last like 30 pounds or so. So he did a lot of the journey on his own. So I was first curious to hear about that. So Vince, I guess if we can go into chronological order and just start with, let's say when you're like 200 pounds, way before you even reached for your initial weight of 400 pounds, kind of like what was going on, and you can just kind of go from there, and we'll just take the conversation wherever it goes. Renee, good to see you.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for inviting me. So, growing up and even into my early 20s, I was normal weight. But in my early 20s, I started to do drugs, methamphetamine particularly. And within 4 years of my drug addiction, I was arrested for a drug crime and convicted of a felony. And the way that had happened was, a friend of mine lied to the police and said that I was selling drugs. So, when I was arrested and going through the justice system, my main thought was on not so much on the fact that I have a major problem, but in my mind, there was sort of like an injustice committed against me because I was not a drug dealer. And that someone that I had known had done this with the police. And so when I was arrested and convicted of a crime, I didn't really acknowledge my drug addiction at all. I was just focused on the fact that my parents discovered how I was living, and just that I just wanted to get through this trial and start my probation and just continue on with my life. I was in total, like, not in denial about my problems, but I just didn't even want to face them. And part of what had happened to me after that ordeal was that I didn't have any trust that I wanted to be around any of my friends or whatnot, and I was completely devastated by the entire thing. So I started to eat. I went back to doing meth, and by that time I was doing meth for years, and people's first impression of meth is, well, you'll lose a lot of weight. Well, after I was doing it for as long as I was, the appetite suppressant portion of it was gone, and I'd be up for 4 days in a row, and I'd just be eating because I'd be starving, and I was also depressed, and I didn't want to see anybody, and the more weight I was gaining, the more I didn't want anyone to see me at all, and the more my depression increased. And so what my day would be I would do drugs at night, and around midnight I'd be starving, and I would call into these really big Italian breaded steak sandwiches, and I would have like probably a 2,500 calorie steak sandwich around midnight with a 2-liter Coke, and that was like my daily diet was 2-liter Coke and this gigantic sandwich, and also being up. And my weight gain was so quick, and I even would not even look at myself in the mirror. I had no appreciation really for how devastating this was, the effect it was having on me. And within 5 years, I was like over 300 pounds, and just shattered as a person.
Well, really quick, let's kind of go back in time a little bit. What do you
Sure.
feel like first led you to even like experiment with something as like hardcore as
That,
methamphetamines? Usually people start with like alcohol, you know, like doing lighter stuff like marijuana or something of that sort.
well, it's a good question, and it's one I still ask myself to this day. I know a lot of people. So I'm in recovery now. So I know a lot of folks in recovery. Drugs was a way for them to cope with their life. I did not have anything I was running away from. I was actually very successful in my lower 20s. I had a condo downtown that I had purchased. I had already worked overseas. Everything was going really well for me. I feel like I was like really doing, I was like 24. I was like on top of the world. I drank like between the years of 19 and 21. I would drink heavy, but not like, I was not like, I was not an alcoholic. I was not, there was nothing about alcohol that I needed to have it. And if I were not drinking, I was totally fine with that. But what I do get is bored. And by the time I got to be 21, 22, drinking was like very boring to me, just the whole routine of it. So for maybe a year or two, I wasn't even drinking, and I had never even done drugs ever in my life up to that point. Um, so I had this great success in my career, and I was like a little restless and bored, and I really just sought it out as some sort of form of like some kind of like illicit excitement. Like I thought I was going to enter into this like hidden world, and I thought that I was going to be able to control it. I don't know who does meth thinking they were going to control it, but I never really seen the aftermath of a meth addiction on somebody. So I really went into it casually and capriciously, and just day by day, week by week, it, you know, in my mind, I know like no one will die from not taking meth. It's not like alcohol, and it's not as physically addicting as say an opiate. But so in my mind, I was like, well, this isn't a physically addicting drug. I could stop it at any time. But however, I'm making the choice to just continue doing it. So I mean, it makes no sense. But and at the beginning, you know, the stimulant was really good for my job. I was a computer programmer. It allowed me to do like fantastic productivity. I could be up for days and like do my job research, have some social time at night, and but you know, so yeah, so it was something I walked into without any care to the effect it was going to have on me. I just didn't even think about it. I don't know. So to this day, I don't know, but I do know that I wasn't really running away from anything. I did it to have fun, and I never was able to stop.
Well, doesn't it kind of really like boost your, I never used it myself personally. Doesn't it kind of like really boost your confidence and just like your overall optimism to life, or is that not correct?
No, it is. It's like a super stimulant. Like there's like charts of like the amount of dopamine or whatever it is that it unleashes in your brain, and it's far and away like the most, by orders of magnitude, higher release of whatever it is in your brain. And it, so yeah, so like whatever you're excited about in life, it's certainly going to magnify your interest and your ability and the pleasure you derive from it in such like a mind-blowing way. The withdrawal is a bitch. And it's kind of, I think that's why I stuck using it, was because I was actually working the entire time, and I could not afford to cope with the withdrawal, which takes about 2 weeks usually. But yes, it does heighten everything to an extent that other drugs don't. And I liked it.
Gotcha.
I did like it. There's no doubt about it. I liked it. I didn't think one day beyond what I was doing, and I just followed the, you know, the tolerance of me needing to do more and more. I just went along with that. And even though I was arrested like 3 years after starting, and like that'd be a big red flag to people, but I didn't get the right lesson from that. I got the lesson that somebody had done this to me, not, oh, my drug life is killing me. And it was. I mean, I lost the job that I had that gave me that success. And my success did sort of, I guess, lead me to think that I could be some kind of superhero on this drug. But that's not the way it turned out.
Well, how did it progress from there? I mean, did you, outside of obviously the you know, getting caught by the police or being turned in by one of your friends, did you see any kind of like red flags building up along the way? I mean, there must have been something.
Pause, but
I was asking if you've seen any like red flags along the way. I know you mentioned you did get obviously caught by the police and have to go through the legal system, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're kind of like telling yourself, you know, like, oh, you know, it's already a slippery slope, maybe I should stop, but then you're already kind of slipping into it, you know what I mean? And it's already a little too far down the line or some stuff of that sort.
yes. So I sort of fell into this rationalization that, well, even before I got arrested, I was recognizing that the effect of the drug on me, in other words, the ability of a quantity to get me high was requiring more and more. And I knew that's like the slippery slope of a drug progression. Like the more you take, the deeper you are in it. But I don't know. I would see other people quit, and I didn't want to quit. I felt like I had more experiences to have in that world. There are certain social aspects, sexual aspects about it that are very enticing, and I didn't want to really leave that. And you know, it wasn't until my recovery years later that, you know, a lot of what we say is like we were searching for connections with people through that experience and way of living. You know, that people in recovery find in recovery. But so yeah, so it was a mixture of like one is once I got deeper in it, I was just kind of content to like, this is my lifestyle now somehow. And I would just continue to suffer with it. And me and my friends, we would like mock people who would recognize they were having a problem and quit. I mean, we'd call them quitters, and we'd just be like, we're gonna die with this stuff. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's the effect of the drug on my thinking process. Looking back on it, of course, it's so easy to say like why didn't you realize what you were doing to yourself? But I just didn't care, or I was stuck and I didn't see that anything would improve. So if I don't see an improvement in my life from quitting, why not just continue to take it all the way down? And that's what I did. Even after I got arrested and I became depressed and isolated. Yeah. After I started gaining weight, I saw nobody. And like people might think it's an exaggeration, but between like 2006 and 2015, I did nothing except work and see my drug dealer and order food. Occasionally go to a family holiday party where I would be so like, I would smell like hygienically. I mean, I was doing so much of this stuff that it would just reek out of me. Even if I took a shower within 2 minutes, people would be like, what's that smell? So I was constantly being humiliated by my own actions. And after a certain amount of humiliation, it's just like you just sort of internalize all of it. And I just didn't care anymore. I mean, I'd be like, okay, well, here's another person that's obviously smelling my body and is disgusted by it. But it's happened so many times that it was just like, oh, well, this is who I am. I'm just this person that people don't want to be around. And yeah, so like for 10 years, I did nothing fun socially with anybody, like not even with the drug people. Because the more weight I was gaining, the more I don't want to like to be around somebody like really unhealthy. Like for me, like I don't want to be around those kind of people. And I certainly didn't want to be around people who wanted to be around me if I was in that condition. It was like I was like reversing the superficiality or whatever. I don't know. But like, I'm like, if anyone wants to hang out with me and I'm like 300 pounds, I don't want to be around somebody who like likes that. I mean, it's a really like perverse attitude. I don't know what it is, but the bigger I got, I didn't want to be with anybody. Even if they wanted to be with me, I'm like, no, like I just want to go home, do my drugs and be by myself. I mean, it was really
like when you're kind of mentioning your lifestyle, you know, doing nothing but working, doing like drugs, and then basically going to a family party like once a year or once every other year. I'm like, dude, you are living the true hardcore computer programmer lifestyle right there. You know, that's like how like super dedicated programmers live, like minus the methamphetamine for most of them, obviously. So.
Right. But the longer I was doing the drugs, the more exhausted I was getting from them. And so like, I'd be at work and I'd be falling asleep at my desk because I would try not to actually use the drugs during my working hours. But anyway, so I'd be at my desk, I'd be falling asleep. I would, like my fingers would hit at the keyboard and like it just create like lines of like J's or something. And like months later, we would go through the code to figure out like why is it not working. And then someone would be like, "Oh, well, here's all your lines," because that's what they would call it. Like they would see all the lines of code. Like, because I was getting really degraded mentally from it all. But in the beginning, it was great. That's how everyone's drug addiction starts. It's great in the beginning, and then it goes to hell. And I just was gonna determined to stick it out. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, so the more weight I was gaining, though, the physical impacts of getting close to 400 pounds in an ever accelerated weight gain was taking a profound physical toll on my body, and that included my ability to live through this drug problem. Like my body was really just every health factor that you could possibly objectively measure me by was in a perilous state. And I would by the time 2015 came around, or actually in 2014, it doesn't really matter, but 2014, so like 6 years after almost 8 years after my arrest, the people I was working with were like, "Dude, like we're not going to see you next year. Like you're not going to make it." And I didn't really care. I was like, well, whatever. I mean, I was so just devastated and depressed and just so used to living like that I didn't even care about anything. And I was just muddling through life.
Do you feel like I find that with a lot of clients, like they grow like a huge dependence on like high blood pressure medication or anti-anxiety medication because their work is so demanding? And I know computer science is not like the easiest, like most easy breezy field to get into. Like, do you feel that contributed at all in terms of, you know, the typical work demand that's put on like an average computer programmer? Or do you feel that had no effect on you personally?
No, so those pressures didn't, no, I was not really under those pressures. No one I ever worked for had ever put expectation on me to do anything more than was reasonable. Now, what I kind of did not know was, and what I know now from my psychiatrist is that, well, at the moment, currently, right now, I'm heavily afflicted with ADHD, and it might be because of the stimulant abuse, more than likely. But looking at the diagnostic symptom list of what an ADHD person has, I recognize that I probably fit those symptoms way before my drug use. And so I did struggle with like focus and being able to be productive. And when I started doing this drug, it like fixed all of that. And it made me like so super efficient. And I was able to do things that I was not able to do in the past. But I was not on any sort of I was not prescribed any medications at all. Cause I mean, until I started gaining weight, I did not have anything physically wrong with me that needed medication.
Gotcha. Well, when was it like a point that came in your life when you're like, enough is enough? Because I find like a lot of times, a lot of people just don't come to that point. You know, they just continue doing what they're doing until it's like far too late, and then maybe they try to reverse course, but it's already kind of like too far downhill. At what point in your life did you say, you know, I'm kind of like tired of being almost like 400 pounds, like, and having the myriad of health issues that go along with that? And are you still at that point like using methamphetamines, or did you already kind of drop that but still continue to kind of gain weight?
Oh no, I used the meth the entire time up to that point. So what the tipping point of me was really people that I was working with. At that point, I was a partner at the company I was working for, which still amazes me. I don't know. I don't know how they allowed that to happen. But my business partners were like, "You need to get surgery." And in my mind, I'm just like, well, like weight loss surgery is like cheating. Like I should diet my way back. But I was like, in my mind, I'm like, like I am so heavy. Okay, so some of the physical things that were happening to me at that level was like I was having nerve compression pain. The nerves in my legs would just spontaneously fire, and it was from the compression of all that weight on my nerves. And so like my legs would just like instantaneously feel like I was like on fire. And also like I could not walk up a flight of stairs without needing like 5 minutes to catch my breath. So I wasn't able to, I was getting to the point where it was hard to walk like a block. Couldn't walk upstairs. My legs were killing me. And I was approaching 40 years old. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm 40 years old. I've been doing drugs for, since the early 2000s. I'm getting older now. What is my old age going to look like if I am so like obese that I become immobilized? Because I'm pretty sure that was like next was immobilization. And I didn't have any friends. I don't have a partner. I knew no one was going to be there to take care of me. If I was immobilized, like I was really thinking long term about this weight problem. Like I need to do something now, quick, or else like something is going to happen. Like I know I could just like I was in a 5XL t-shirt and my stomach would still be hanging out down below it, even though like the shirt would like drape down to my knees. And it was so heavy, and I knew like if I don't do weight loss surgery, which is what my business partners were suggesting I do, and they actually scheduled me to begin the program for the surgery. They like pushed me into it. But I was at the point where there was no denying that I really had to do something immediately about it, and I didn't have any confidence that I was going to be able to diet or exercise my way back.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, how did it progress there? Like going through the surgery and your experiences with that. I've only had maybe like 3 clients over my 14-year career that have had weight loss surgery, and then they kind of usually always hire me to do like the last, like 20 or 30 pounds, or kind of teach them a lot more about how to kind of like just be overall healthier, not just kind of on the leaner side, but overall achieve like overall health. But yeah, for listeners, can you kind of describe your experience with that?
Sure. So I went to Northwestern Hospital in Chicago, and so typically I believe you need to have many comorbidities. So one of them that qualified me was sleep apnea, but I had other ones too. I mean, every blood test was just horribly bad. But so so you have a little bit of proving to do for the hospital and the insurance company to demonstrate to them that the surgery will be a success. And so you go through a nutrition program beforehand, and you talk to their psychologist, which really it's like an interview. And you also have to go on a sleep apnea machine, which means that you need to sleep, and which also means that they are monitoring the amount of sleep that you get through the sleep apnea machine. So considering that I was a meth user and I'd be up for 4 days in a row, I knew there was going to be a conflict, but I knew that if I didn't go forward with this program, that I was going to die, and I didn't want to die. So I did just stop the drugs cold turkey, and I went on the sleep apnea machine. And the sleep apnea machine was like a godsend. Like I mean, obviously I'm not sleeping, but look, with the machine and being able to sleep all night and get 8 hours and feel so rested the next day, I mean, even that was feeling, it was so a good feeling to be able to get a good night's sleep. And then, at least as far as like the reactions to my drug use by people around me, of course, my head was clearing up. People were like, oh, wow, like I can see like your personality seems to be emerging. So going through like the pre-qualification for the surgery was actually a bit of a good time for me. It was already giving me great benefits. But yeah, so the pre-surgery trial period, is something that they all take seriously. You have to go on to a diet, which is basically a low carb diet. I mean, they just want you to stop eating so much sugar and whatnot. And I started to lose weight right away. And the nutrition classes made sense. And I began to be very excited or looking forward to the surgery itself. And then, then the surgery happened. I was in the hospital. I don't know if you want to talk about. I was in the hospital for 3 days for recovery. I had no like issues or any sort of problems with that. And then I had a 2-month leave from work, and I got home to my parents. They were taking care of me, and the hospital suggested that I walk as much as possible. And within 2 weeks of the surgery, I was walking like 5 miles a day every day. Um, they say one of the weird side effects of a surgery like that is that you instantly get like all this energy that one would not suspect that one would get, particularly for being so heavy, but also from having I had a sleeve gastrectomy, which means that they go into your body and like your stomach is a kidney bean. I'll just say the stomach is here. Your stomach's a kidney bean. They go in there with the choker thing, and they cut they basically go in there and they cut the curve, they cut the mass of your stomach out, and all you're left with is just the remnants of the edge of the stomach. That's the surgery I had. So it was major surgery. But yeah, within 2 weeks, I was walking every day. I wanted to walk. It was great. Like I had all this energy, and I was losing like 30 pounds a week, maybe. Well, in the beginning, you can't eat much. So I was eating like hundreds of calories, maybe in a week or so. There's this conception that if you eat too much, you'll stretch it out. But what the doctors say is that it's the inflammation and the healing from the surgery that makes it really restrictive in the beginning, and then over about a year or so, you can eat to a normal size. But I have metal staples in my stomach, so my stomach's not able to stretch. But in any case, I was losing like 30 to 20 pounds a week. And within that first year, I had lost 200 pounds. And I was down to about 220. And then I started doing drugs again.
Okay. Well, really quick, going back, why did they have you go on like a short diet before beginning? Is there like a weight range that's required before you even are qualified to do like that surgery? Or is that just to even see if you're going to clean up your lifestyle at all, like after the surgery?
Yeah, it's to demonstrate that you can stick to, that you have some semblance of discipline. And you can kind of like do your part. I think this is really more of an insurance company thing. The insurance company doesn't want to spend $200,000 if you can't even like manage a diet before the surgery. But it does also give you a little bit of framework to follow before the surgery. It's a good indicator whether or not the surgery is going to be a success. So I stuck to it. I did everything to the letter. I'm someone who, considering that I did waste like 18 years of my life on drugs, but I'm somebody that like once I start something, I do want to do it well. And I understood the gravity of this process of the surgery. So I didn't want to put anything in jeopardy to be able to have the surgery. And so I stuck to all the guidance and the dietary restrictions, which is basically no sugar, like no processed sugar. And, just like, if you just eat like a normal meal, like someone that heavy is just going to lose weight naturally anyway. I don't think the diet was anything special. It was just like to basically prove like I'm not going to eat potato chips all day long and sit at home. Like, can you do that for 2 weeks at least, or 2 months? And I did it. I don't have much cravings for bad food.
Gotcha. And I guess in that case, like, is that how much it costs? 200,000 to get that weight loss surgery? I didn't know it was like that much.
I don't. In my mind, that was I think that's what the total of it was, or it actually might have been more. I went to one of the premier hospitals in Chicago. So I do know it's more expensive than say maybe a hospital or practice that's sort of devoted specifically for that kind of surgery. Like I know if I went to like Mexico or somewhere else that is just as quality of a provider, it'd probably be a lot less expensive. But I went to Northwestern. I had insurance. So I think Northwestern's going to kind of hike the bill up a bit. I think I did have to pay $25,000. But the company I owned, I didn't ask for the money, but they were really on my side and they really wanted me to get my life back together. So they contributed a lot to that money. I'm not sure if it was $25,000, but it was a significant amount of money that they gave to me to pay for this thing, in addition to the insurance.
Gotcha. Well, that's nice of them. So,
yeah,
you basically
they saved my life.
Cool. So you basically got the weight loss surgery, and then like a year later, you said you lost like 100 pounds or some amount of that, correct? After the weight loss surgery?
Within a year, Well, actually, within 8 months, I had lost 200 pounds. So I was down I was from 400 down to about 220. And I remember that because at the end of that year, I went back to drugs and I knew what my weight was on that day. And I knew what it was 2 weeks after starting the drugs. And I lost 35 pounds from the meth usage initially. And I was down to like 180, 180 within a year of the surgery from 400.
Gotcha. Okay. But then what happened? What happened after that? Can you kind of go on with your story?
So after being physically, socially isolated for all of that time because of my weight, when I got down to 220 or so, I felt like I was ready to go out again and see my old friends and engage socially. And what I went to do was to go drinking. I would go to bars with my friends. And now with my new smaller, well, first of all, I was so less fat. I mean, I was 230 pounds, so I blended in with everybody else. No one would have known how big I was. But with my smaller stomach capacity size, I'd be able to be intoxicated a lot quicker than anybody else. So I started having like just like drunken weekends at bars and whatnot. And within 2 months of doing that, I had the urge to do drugs again. And I sought out an old friend. And I was like, it was New Year's. It was New Year's of 2016. And I had time off work and I wanted to get high. And I said, okay, I'll just do it for the weekend. But every time I do meth, every time I do meth, no matter what my intention is, I cannot stop doing it. And so New Year 2016, I was doing it pretty much until into 2018. Now I lost weight. I felt like I didn't so naked. I did not look so good. Like naked, like I said, I don't even know what my waist size was, but my stomach was hanging down to my knees. So I had like stretched skin in my front and my, even like the pubic area had stretched skin, and my thighs, my inner thighs were like Michelin man tire thighs. So, you know, I had like the remnants of the damage to my skin. However, I was with people that were doing drugs and I was doing drugs, and no one gave me any sort of bad reaction to that. So I felt like I was like kind of like, finally I was able to like interact with people again, and I felt like I was looking as good as I was going to be physically able to look, considering the skin damage. But yeah, I mean, I started doing meth again, and I started doing it hard, way more than I had ever done it before. But I was with people, and meth just takes over all your thinking process. And so once I started to really, like, when I say heavy, what I mean is intravenously using it. I never used it intravenously before all that, but after the surgery, I started using it intravenously. And that really just kind of became like a really fast downfall in my life, because doing it in the more softer ways. I mean, I don't know if anyone could be a functional meth addict, but it's easier to, I don't know. When you shoot up, there's really no more hiding from people, and you don't even realize how bad you are. So in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm healthy again, but yet now I'm doing drugs again. But I didn't know that there was a way out. And now that I was around people again, the people I was hanging around with were all like in it for life, so to speak. And I was in the same way of thinking, like, obviously I've returned to this drug. There's no escape from this drug. I'm going to die with this drug, and I want to. I mean, I wasn't like suicidal, but I was very just like nonchalant about the fact that I'm going to be a lifelong meth addict. And if I die as an addict, then at least I died doing what I wanted to do.
Gotcha. Well, how did it progress from there? Because I mean, at one point you did drop all of it, and then at one point, I mean, you decided to contact me. So usually that kind of person would never contact me, the one you just kind of described,
Oh, yes. So make a long story short, so the 2 years of the renewed drug usage, I got fired from my job. I had to move back with my family. I think by that point I was like 42 years old. They run a company. I was working for them, and it became increasingly difficult to hide my drug usage from them. I mean, I thought I was hiding it, but I was not hiding it. And eventually I did some things like I got involved in some car accidents because I was so fatigued all the time. I was fatigued all the time. My mental state was just, I could not think, I could not talk. I mean, I could talk, but it was just well, right before I moved back to my parents, like I would have friends warn other friends of theirs if they were going to see me. They would say, okay, we're going to see this guy. He's a little bit slow. So like, you know, like don't expect to have like a conversation with him because he's not going to make any sense. You know, I'm a very intelligent person, and that was the perception that people were having of me. So it was bad. Like it was my brain was just totally like just exhausted and fatigued. So I got into some car accidents and I totaled the car, and then that's when my family was like, okay, we can't like deny this anymore, and they confronted me in an intervention. And my family, we lived in the suburbs, so they were like, you're either going to get help or you have to like go somewhere else. We're not going to have you live with us. And I thought about it for a while. I'm like, well, can I be homeless out here in the suburbs? Because I don't want to go to treatment. I didn't want to go to a rehab thing. And I was like, and I was not the kind of person that was ever successful in like living off other people. I just don't have the skills for that. So I had to come to the quick realization, like, no, I would not survive being homeless in the suburbs. I have no choice but to go to this rehab. So they let me pick the rehab I wanted to go to. I went in there with complete skepticism that it was going to do anything for me or that I even wanted it. But on the second day of being there, they took us to, every night is a 12-step meeting. And the one they took me to when I was available to go was like a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And even though I was withdrawing and just basically brain dead tired, I saw the people that were in that meeting from the outside, because they bring meetings into the hospital. And these people would talk about how bad they were, but then to see them in the state that they were in then, the people from the outside, like they had energy, life, light, they were humorous. And I just knew right and then, like, you know, if the 12-step programs could work for them, it would work for me. And I really wanted it to work for me because I couldn't continue to live like the way I was living anymore. I just couldn't do it. I didn't know what the answer was, and there was the answer. You know, step one says we are powerless against our addiction and our lives become unmanageable. And I never heard step one before, but when I heard it in that meeting, it described my life to a T. It was such a simple description of my problem that I had no power over my drugs and my life was unmanageable. I mean, I was kicked out of the company that I was part owner of, and I was living with my parents, and my mother was basically taking care of my finances because they were just complete horrible mess. I was like, well, that's me. And if they could describe my problem so simply, then they must have the answer too. And these people that were in the meeting with me were evidence that it could work. And on that second day in the hospital, I committed to myself that I would do everything possible to escape this life that I had put myself into. So I was in the detox hospital for 10 days, and they said, when I get out of the hospital, I have some choices to make about what I was going to do with my life after that. I could go back to living with my parents, but if I wanted to have the best shot at this, they said I should move into what they call a sober living house, which might be considered a halfway house, and live in an environment with restrictions that over time would give me the ability to make the right choices in my life, just to have a life where drugs doesn't need to be an answer to anything. And so for a great financial sacrifice to myself and to the bafflement of my family, I chose to live in the sober living house. I didn't know, the guy that interviewed me, the administrator, he's like, how long do you intend to live here? And I thought, well, a month, I don't know, how long does it take? And so no, so he said 3 months is the minimum. I said, sure, 3 months, whatever. But I ended up living there for a year. That first year of my recovery, I was way more affected by the drugs than even I appreciated during that first year, and I could only recognize in hindsight. But I really needed that space. I was unemployed. All I would do was just go to many different meetings all throughout the day, and experience like a new group of people that I've never met before. When I started all this, I had 0 friends. When I got out of the hospital, I had no friends. All I had was my family. And I made some friends in these meetings and in the place that I was living. And, you know, we would support each other. And I had no doubt in my mind that I had doubt. Like every day was a doubt. I did not know what my future was going to look like. And around this time, I was about like 190 pounds. And I knew I didn't want to get fat again, because one of the consequences of the surgery, the doctors tell me, is that my body will have the propensity to gain weight way more quicker than if I had not had the surgery. And I don't know what the basis of that is, but I mean, it was true for me. If I ate poorly, I would like really see it right away in my body. So, you know, I would try to stick to like a keto diet. And then I got a personal trainer. So I would try to do workouts and whatnot. But maybe about 7 months into recovery, I was put onto a non-stimulant ADHD drug called Strattera, which is sort of like an antidepressant. And it just destroyed my energy level and my ability to want to work out. So I was incrementally gaining weight. And I looked at my scale history, because I have a smart scale. And so my weight had like fluctuated between 220 to 210 from 2018, even through this year, with occasional peaks into like 240 or 250. During the COVID lockdown, I know I had gained a lot of weight, and I refused to even weigh myself. But I saw pictures, so I must have been like 250. So so like last year, my post-surgery peak was probably about 250 pounds. I would try to watch my carb intake. I was really obsessed with the carb intake, not about the quality of my food. So I'd be eating like lunch meat as my healthy food. I'd be eating hot dogs, lunch meat, and telling myself, well, there's no carbs in this, so as long as I'm not eating sugar, I'll be able to maintain my weight. And, you know, maybe that could contribute to me not gaining more weight. But that's the way I was eating. And I was doing Orange Theory. I had a trainer before COVID, and then after COVID, I went to Orange Theory, and I lost a lot of weight on Orange Theory, but it was exhausting. But I would get down to 210, and I would never be able to get really below 210. Like 210 was like the floor, and I could not get past it, and I could not figure out why, because I wasn't religious about it, but like I didn't eat fast food. I wasn't eating junk food. I can't eat much anyway, so the food I was eating was just like the food that I needed to eat. But like around 210 or so, that would be the limit. I could not get below it, like no matter what I did. And then I would get discouraged sometimes and just be like, fuck it. Or Orange Theory would exhaust me, and I did not want to go at 5 a.m. and I just like, I had no time for it. So that was earlier this year. So I would, and a few of my friends, they made some really good physical transformations, like in very short amount of time. And I looked at them and I was like, wow, like what are they doing? And I didn't want to think like it was steroids. So I was trying to think the best of them. And they just said, I changed my diet, and I have a trainer, and we work out together, and you know, nothing will stop you from doing that too. And I was like, well, I'm eating okay. Like I'm not eating junk food. I'm not eating McDonald's. Like, why can't I do what you're doing? Like I'm killing myself and I'm getting nowhere. And then another client of yours, I saw how well he did. I was like, fuck, like you were pretty like soft, you know, you're fat, I guess. You're kind of heavy like a year before, and now you're like jacked. I'm like, how the hell, like who are you going to see to do that? And he said, you. I had no idea who you were. And I watched some of your, well, I don't know if I'm going too far ahead of your question or not.
No, go ahead, man.
Okay.
This is your show.
So I went on your
Instagram. Kind of sitting
Instagram.
back and listen to your story.
Okay. All right. So I went on your Instagram, and you were talking about like everything except the gym. The main thing that really got me interested was when you were talking about food and how toxic the food that we eat is, and how we don't know how to eat healthily. And in my mind, I knew the food that I was eating was like, you know, processed meats or lunch meat and full of chemicals. And people would say like, oh my God, like all you eat is lunch meat, like the phosphorus or whatever the chemical is in those things. I'm not sure what it is, but to just be like, you can't be eating that. And I'd be like, well, it's no carbs. Like, but it wasn't working for me. Like I was, you know, like I said, I wasn't like getting below a certain level. And you talked about the food, and I was like, that makes so much sense to me, because like I knew the food was a major part of my problem. And then you also talked a lot about how even before the diet, it has to be the mental state of the person that's going to try to engage in a way of living that's going to be the most optimal for them, or to allow them to achieve their goals. And a lot of what you said really coincides with how my drug recovery has been. You know, in the 12-step programs and my therapy and whatnot, a lot of it is about finding ways of living that don't cause stress for you, and not putting yourselves in situations that make one miserable, and, you know, repairing relationships with other people and not being in situations that are going to stress you out, and also like knowing who you are and who you want to be. I was on meth for like almost 20 years. I lost all my self-conception, pretty much emotionally stunted the entire time. And in my years of recovery, you know, it's part of the recovery process is sort of like recognizing what your core values are, what your boundaries are, and you know, are you living in that, in what you want to do? Because then if you're not doing that, you're going to create like a mental condition for oneself that might lead one back to drugs or alcohol. And like I said, when I started my recovery, I know I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to do anything that's going to get me back to doing drugs. So I did like all that work in my 3 years here to get myself into that mental state. And then you started talking about it, you know, in a non-drug context, but it was like basically all the same thing that I had already been working on for years. And before I worked with you and all that, I would, in meetings, you give opportunity to speak in recovery meetings. And I was be saying like in 2021, I was like, I feel like I've grown so much in my recovery that like all the anxiety I had in the beginning and all the stress and the doubt and the uncertainty, I feel I was like in 2021, I feel like it's finally gone away, and I finally feel like at peace with myself, and I have like a confidence in myself, and I'm okay with who I am, and I'm not really concerned about what other people's perceptions of me are. So I was at that point already, and I had already acknowledged it, and then I found your videos, and you're talking about food, which I knew was my main problem, I believed. And I felt like I had already got to the stage of like this mental awareness that you were talking about that would lead someone to have optimal success in their life and achieve their goals. So I was like, wow, like this is the answer that I've been looking for, and I didn't even know it. Like you were just speaking my language. And you know, I reached out to you, and I was so eager to start. Like, you know, I'm a little impatient, and like, you know, there's things that have to be done at the beginning, and I was just like, in my mind, I was like, so like, I'm like, okay, you just have to calm down and wait and wait and wait, you know, eventually it'll begin, you know. And I was just so eager to start. I was like, I knew it was going to work for me, and I was so excited to begin it. And going through the assessment interview, talking a little bit about this stuff, and speaking with you, and filling out that, like, I don't know how many pages stuff, like, oh, you know, like, what's your mental state? What's your physical state? You know, do you wake up to pee at night? Like all those kind of questions. And you gave me like what the chart is, and like everything was like really low. Like there's a scale of like, okay, this is a problem versus not so much of a problem. And my numbers were really low. And I was like, yes, like that's a testament of like how well, or I don't know, like how much of this I've already done. And when we began our program with the nutrition and the exercise, I mean, it instantly started to reflect in my appearance and my mental state, and the results were like almost instantaneous. I never cooked for myself, and since July, I cooked nearly every single meal from raw ingredients. I was really nervous about the food part was daunting. I did not know if I could do it. Like sometimes I get these like really, so I get this high amount of self-doubt if I begin something that I've never done before. And then I amaze myself at how easy it is to actually do something. So it's kind of a good lesson to like put these doubts aside and just go for it, which can be applied in many aspects of life. So yeah, I was so eager to start, and I was determined to make this work as well. Just like my recovery, I was really determined to make my recovery work, because the evidence is there that it's something that can work, and your program has, you know, all the other clients that you have is testament that it works as well. And I wanted to succeed. I was not prepared for how effective the changes I made were going to be on me. I don't know what the weight loss was in the beginning. Like I can't rattle off like an average weight per week, but I know it was at least like maybe 5 pounds, but it was a drastic, immediate change. And I saw it, and I was like, I don't care what anyone else says, because people will be like, "Oh, that's what you're going to eat. You're going to eat steak. uh, you're not going to have like this food we brought in at work for Friday, catered Friday lunch at work. You're not going to eat like the pizza or whatever." I'm like, no, like this is the food that I'm eating, and it's working for me. Like, the grass-fed beef and all the things you talk about in all your other videos. That's what I adopted. And I just didn't like. Many people were like, "Here, have this pie," like pushing food on me, and I just be like, "Nope, my mood's fine. Thank you for your concern, but I'm great." I don't think I ate in a restaurant for almost 2.5 months after we started, and I just was like, you know what? I'm going to do what works, and the results are there, and there's no reason for me to deviate from them. And what I liked about working with you was it wasn't so much like you were a dictator or anything, because what I got from the way that you do this, and this is my own thoughts, so I don't know if it is the way you do it, but basically, like, you're going to give me the information, and you're like, here, like, this is the information that you need to succeed. Take it or leave it. Like, you want to succeed, you'll do this. But if you don't want to succeed, then just go back to what you think is right for you. Now, of course, I never gave you an opportunity to correct anything that I was doing, because I never went off the plan. I don't know how your other clients are, but I was like slavishly devoted to following everything that you suggested. And there were a lot of times where I was like, I want to ask him if I could have restaurant food. But then I was like, well, what would he tell me? He would say, well, if you want to achieve your goals, you're not going to want to eat restaurant food. If you want to achieve your goals, you're going to avoid the restaurant food. And that's what I just put into my thought process every time I was kind of like questioning about something. I was like, well, like, how do I get this answer? Do I ask him, like, like, should I put salt on I don't know, I'm just making some shit up. Should I do this? Or in my mind, I'm like, well, what will get me to my goal? And I read your book, Law of Aesthetics, and people who achieve their goals make every decision and priority to move them toward their goal. And if you put other things in front of your goal, and this is the same thing in recovery, if I put other things ahead of my recovery, I'm going to potentially use drugs again. And in the same way, if I want to live in this healthy way, then every question I ask myself has to be answered with, am I going to get to my goal, or am I not going to get to my goal? And that includes not only food, but the stress that I put myself into with jobs, where I live, friendships, what I watch on the TV. It's everything. Everything is like, well, am I going to get to my goal by doing this, or is it going to deter me from achieving what I want to achieve?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's just like a very simple, there's a bit more to it than that, but like a very simple way to audit, your decision making. Where's this taking me? Is this taking me closer to where I want to be, further away from where I want to be, or keeping me exactly where I am, whether I want to or not want to be there, So it's an easy thing I use with myself personally. Was there any like hesitation you had before signing up for the program? Because one thing that kind of sucks about my work, honestly, is a lot of times people do the assessment, which you did, initially with my assistant, like Jerry, and they really do need the coaching, and they really do need the training. Some of them even need it like way more than you. And usually the people that need it the most are like least likely to sign up, I find that to be the case. Some of them that definitely do need it for sure. They do sign up, but more times than not, they kind of always just talk themselves out of it. They're like, well, I don't have like the money for it. But then you see them like 3 weeks later posting a travel picture where they definitely paid for that 2-week trip. That's like way more than the whole entire 3-month coaching program. That could definitely add a lot more value to their life than like a 2-week trip that basically after the trip, you just come back and it's like business as usual, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to go on. I'm pretty sure the point is clear, but I was just wondering what your take is on that.
So did I have any hesitancy or any maybe doubts or whatnot in between the time of being exposed to your program and then signing up for it? No, I did not. I had done a little bit of my due diligence by watching your Instagram videos and getting an idea for what your coaching method is. I don't know how to describe what it is that you do, but like I said, like all the talk and all the emphasis that you put onto the mental state of me, or whoever your client's going to be, as well as the dietary part. That is what I knew would jive with the way that I currently was and what I knew I needed help with. Like, I knew I needed help with my nutrition and the food I was eating, because I had this kind of awareness that my poor toxic food, because that's what I think it was keeping me at a limit that I wasn't able to get past. So I guess, like, if I did have a doubt, it was whether or not I could actually do the food stuff. Like you, I'm not a really good cook. Yeah, like, I have no experience cooking food. I mean, for me, cooking was making cereal, which means just pouring milk over, cereal. That was cooking for me. So I had a little bit of uncertainty around that. And I was like, oh, and then also, there were some no restaurant eating, things of that nature. I was like, well, like, that seems kind of to be a challenge. And then, I had to make sure that I could commit to that, because I didn't want to sign up for a program like yours and then not follow it, because that'd be a waste of my time and my money. But, I had to be like, okay, well, if I'm going to make this work, I'm going to have to commit myself to it. So no, I only had like the minors of doubts, and I knew if I could succeed at this, like with the food stuff primarily, that's a skill I needed. I know I needed that skill, and I didn't know where else I would actually be able to get that skill. We're not for working for you, worth not. Nah. If I wasn't going to do it with you, like, where was I going to get that information from? So while I didn't know, my confidence was kind of low about that, but I knew that's the challenge that I needed.
Gotcha. I forgot, like, what weight did we start at when you came into the program? I think it must have been like maybe 210 or 220. I forgot exactly the number off the top of my head.
So when I contacted you, I was actually 207, but on the formal first day of the 3 months, I was at 217. My weight really, like, goes up and down all the time. But I was at 217 on July 5th. And today I am like 178. So I know our program ended a month ago, but it's 4 months later now, and I have lost 40 pounds. So if you average that out, that's 10 pounds a week. And I will be honest that, well, not honest, but so I have this, I have the curse of people saying, like, wow, like, what the fuck have you done? Like, you look amazing. Like, people that maybe have not seen me throughout the 3 months, when they see me now, they're like, whoa, like, who are you? Like, I didn't even recognize you. And even the people that see me every day, they're like every day that I see you, you look so much better, like, each and every day. And it's because, I don't know, I guess I'm like a humble brag person, but, like, it gets tiring having to acknowledge, like,
It's tough being a
obviously people are really happy for me. And yes. So that's actually been like the biggest challenge, is just having the grace to accept people's compliments, answer their questions. But, like you've seen, I've been a total evangelist for all of the output and all of the things that you have out there for people to take advantage of. When I was in the assessment and the guy was asking me what is my goal weight number, and I was like, I don't know what my goal weight number. I don't even know what's even possible. This is more of that doubt that I get in my mind. Like, I don't even know what I'm capable of doing. And he's like, well, I need a number, man. And I was like, I don't know, like, what, 30 pounds? I mean, 30 pounds, that would be 180 something. I was like, well, that seems kind of ambitious. Like, I've been, like, in the 200s for so long. I was like, I don't know if I can get beyond this, like, 200-pound barrier. Like, is it possible? So I was like, okay, 180. I just answered that, just, like, basically to give him a number so we can move on to the next question. So yeah, it was like, yeah, whatever, 180, 190, whatever. I just want to be able to know how to cook. That's really what was going through my mind. Like, I really want like the food portion of this thing. And here I am in the 170s. It's like, I had to throw my doubt out the window, and I have to like be able to make ambitious goals for myself and have no doubt that I'll be able to accomplish them if I have the tools and I'm in the right frame of mind to make it happen.
Did you have any kind of skepticism about it being like an online program? Because a lot of people have like an impression that coaching has to be done like in person, that's where the quality is. I was just curious your point on that.
I mean, I don't know. There was a little, well, okay. So intellectually, I realized, we talked very well about what the program would consist of, and it consists of a dietary plan in your videos. The only thing in my mind was like, during like the workouts, like the weightlifting and whatnot, a lot of this was new, well, was not unfamiliar with me, but, I'm just being unsure of my form. Am I lifting the weights properly? I mean, that was really the only aspect of this being a remote thing, or a remote. The only aspect of this being remote was basically how would I know if I'm lifting weights correctly, or how would I know if I'm in the gym doing the proper things. But I'm good with following instructions. So I don't need a babysitter. I don't need somebody to be just standing right behind me watching me do a bench press. You've asked me to take videos of me doing each of the workouts, which I did for the most part, and you gave me really great corrections for my form and other suggestions. And you've always been responsive to when I said, hey, this particular exercise I can't do either because I have lack of equipment to do it, or maybe part of my body was not working right. And you were always responsive to make the alterations that needed to get made. So no, I mean, I knew that the remote thing would work well because I was already in the mindset to be able to follow a plan and not need someone there right in person.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me see. Let me take a look at my notes here. I just want to. Okay. Well, are there any other things you'd like to touch on that we can kind of touch on this slide that would help people maybe overcome like a sticking point in their life, that haven't really got to that point of like, I need to change. And unfortunately, sometimes I feel like a lot of times people are like living in pathology so long, they begin to normalize it and see that as just normal and nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Because I do get a lot of people with those HAQ scores, the ones that you're mentioning where you're in the green, for example, in a lot of categories. Like a lot of people come in and they're just in the red in pretty much every category. And when I first start talking to them about that, they're like, I feel completely fine. They're like, I go for runs here and there, or like I do this boot camp here and there. I'm like, well, I mean, look at your scores. They're like through the roof. You have like gut inflammation. Your basically adrenal glands have already like blown up like many years ago. Your anxiety, depression, anger is through the roof. Et cetera, et cetera. They're like, they see that as totally normal, So I find that needing to re-educate the person on what actually normal is, like as an important part of like the coaching process.
Yeah, so I think one of the advantages that I had, or one of the things that was on my side when I began to work with you, is the fact that I have been in a 12-step program for about 3 years. And I had lived in a state of complete physical and mental pain for the 20 years prior to that. And in those 20 years or so, I just lived with it. And
hey, what's up, Vince? I was kind of worried we might lose that footage. I'm like, dude, no. So I quickly have to press save, to save it. Okay, but we'll finish up with this one. Go ahead, whatever you're mentioning.
So I was saying that, I had lived in misery and suffering and just contented myself that that's my life. And it took everything away from me, right? So I had the luxury. So in the 3 years of my recovery, my recovery has given me my life back. And it focuses a lot on on the mental aspects of how one lives and the decisions that they make. And so for someone that's coming into this program, I'll say this, like, so everything I've done in these 3 years to put my life back together, all of it is filtered through what is it that I want, what's my core value, or what is it that I want my life to look like in the future, particularly as I get older. Like, I'm 47 now, and I should look a lot worse than I do, but luckily I don't know. So anyway, so what is going to get me to the finish line in life? And there's hard choices to be made about that, and to accomplish your goals, the true significant goals in your life, which are really more inner than outer, you have to plan your life around that. I feel like I could not put myself living in a place of chaos and misery. Like, I can't go home to a place that I don't want to live in. I can't go to a job that makes me want to. Okay, I don't want to be dramatic, but I don't want to go to a job where I'm going to be just pulling my hair out all day and just going home as an empty shell of a human being. That all takes a toll on somebody, and so going into a program like yours, Eugene, where the answers are very simple, but the work could be significant. I mean, the results are so manifest in what I've been able to do in the 3 months. That, if somebody wants to have that kind of success, and it's not a success that you get to and then you could just go on to the next thing. Like, this is something that I'm going to have to keep in my mind and in everything that I do for as long as I want to maintain my health. So everything has to be decided through that prism. Like, what is going to determine all my actions? Like, what's the prime determinant here? Is it to maintain relationships with people? Is it to live in a certain kind of house? But yet I'm just miserable and I'm just unhappy, and there's, like, life is just a chore. And this is the way that I've approached it. And so the food and the working out are just like the last steps to getting to a life of wellness. And so, like, what I would stress to people is, well, one is that steady incremental work will pay off. Instant results may not come. It took me over a year to get my brain back together, but I had sort of the insight and support to say, you just take things one day at a time, and if there is a setback, it's okay. Like, just keep striving toward the goal. And I know a lot of people's fitness journeys, they seem like they're stuck or it's not going anywhere, and they just want to give up or return to the comfort of what got them to where they're at now. But the changes that someone has to make in their life, it's not a diet, right? It's not, oh, I have this workout plan. It's like, what is my life? What are the core values of my life, and how I'm going to get there? And what are the choices that I have in front of me? So what I would say to somebody is, recognize, like, what is it that you really want in your life? And then you have to work toward it. And if you work toward it and you make the right choices and you don't give yourself setbacks, like, if I were to relapse on meth, my brain is going to remember what it was like and just cling on to wanting to keep that going. Like, I know if I were to do meth again, it would be a disaster, because I know I can't stop once I started. And I guess someone going into a program like this is something similar, in an analogy. It's like, it's comforting to go back to the things that you thought were helping you, but yet got you into a condition that you want to change. So I would just say, keep that determination, avoid setbacks as much as humanly possible, but no one's perfect. Just get back on the horse. If something, you go out, maybe you have to travel for work and you have no choice but to have dinner with people at restaurants. So, like, okay, well, whatever. Tomorrow's another day. That's something my first sponsor would tell me. Like, whatever it is that you want to do in life, don't worry about trying to get it all today because you're not going to be able to do it. You know, tomorrow is another day to do this or that. And eventually, day by day, the benefits build up. Just like day by day, the poor choices build up. So I would just say, you know what you want to do. The suggestions that Eugene gives work. You know, it may not be easy, but it's pretty obvious what one needs to do, if you're honest with yourself. You're going to lie to yourself. You're going to tell yourself some fantasies, bullshit yourself. Listen to what other people say and not your gut or your brain. You know, you're not going to do very well. You got to be honest with yourself. You have to know what you want. You have to be willing to make the hard choices to get it.
Yeah, and since it is the weekend and, you know, quick exercise, a big challenge is like, well, I don't know what I want. You know, I hear that often because a lot of people, they don't even do the deep soul searching or take any risks in life to even have like a reference point of what they like or don't like. Because, you know, to know like what the color black is, you have to know what the color white is. You know what I mean? Like you can't just have like one color and then expect to know another. So I found like an easy thing for me to do was just have like basically like a journal. And whenever you feel good about something or like you feel like, oh, this boss kind of talks to me that way and I feel great or appreciated. So you want to write that down. That's definitely one of your core values right there. So next time you look for a future employment, you look for that characteristic in your boss or manager or whatever, your partner. Or sometimes, you know, like even relationships don't work out. And instead of being angry about it, I'll be like, well, I'll actually be thankful because that relationship that didn't work out shines some light on what I don't want in my next relationship. So it gets me closer to understanding like what I do want. And as Stefan Walensky would say, you know, in order to know like who you are, you have to first know who you are not. You know, that is just what it is. And you got to take risks. Hopefully the risks aren't too detrimental. I mean, I would highly recommend doing calculated risks, etc. But you're always going to fail. Just know that it's like unavoidable. And the best thing to do is just to kind of use that as actually a good thing because those failures are showing you what you don't want in your life. So hopefully if you have the courage and to follow your gut instinct, like you mentioned, on your next attempt, you get even closer to what you do want like in your life. And it's like a pretty simple rinse and repeat process. There's really, you don't need to be a master in like a PhD in psychology to understand that process. It just kind of takes time and just a lot of trial and error basically. So.
Yeah, I mean, my life has been full of choices that did not work out very well for me. I've made many, many, many mistakes and lived with inside of them for so long. You know, one of the benefits of going through something that I've gone through is that you do see all of the mistakes. You see what did not work for you. You know what when you're on the other side of it, you have all those lessons. Like I have such like insights into myself that I would never have had were it not for my drug addiction and recovery. I would not be the person I am right now had I not lived through that wreck of a situation for so long that now I know like, okay, well, I live like that. I don't want to do that again. So I don't need to make those same decisions anymore. Those are the bad ones. Make something up, open your mind to other ways of other possibilities. But yeah, I feel like learning from one's mistakes is the best teacher. Even at work, I have subordinates who might make mistakes. Like, well, you know what? This is the best way you're going to learn how to do it right because now you know what happens when.
I don't even know if there is another way of learning.
Right.
If you're not making mistakes, then you're definitely not taking literally like any risks in life, like whatsoever on top of that, you know?
Yes. Yeah, one's mistakes are great guideposts through life. I mean, if you don't recognize the mistake was made and then take the lesson from it. Like you don't have to like beat yourself up over the fact that the mistake was made. Like I do not beat myself up over the meth addiction or getting to be 400 pounds or all the other things that I did. I do not beat myself up over that. They're in the past. I can't change them. But what I could do is get the lessons from all that. And ideally, a person would learn the lessons from other people, but a lot of us have to make them ourselves. So if you do make mistakes, learn from them.
Yeah. Well, Vince, thank you for being a guest. It looks like, does anyone have any questions for Vince at all that he could help answer? Just shoot them my way. And if there aren't any, I mean, I appreciated the chat with Vince a tremendous amount to hear his story, although I got to know him already during our training quite a bit. It was interesting. It was interesting to hear from you. So, okay. Well, Vince, thank you. You know, honestly,
Thank
you're
you so
probably
much.
like one of the easiest clients in the world to train. I even felt guilty during our once a week like phone conversation, which I do with all of my clients because there isn't really much to talk about. You're like, well, you hit all your goals, you're ahead of schedule. Okay, I'll chat with you next week, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I'd be like, oh, I have nothing to ask you and I have nothing to tell you. And I'm like, other than the fact that I lost just slightly more weight than we ever anticipated that I'd be losing. You know, like, you know, they say I was budgeted to lose 2 pounds this week and I only lost 6. I'm like, fuck, why couldn't I have lost 10? So it was great working with you. I mean, your program was so effective to me. Like, even now, I still send you texts saying, like, you know, the gratitude that I have. Yeah, so great. I really appreciate that. And I'm honored to be, I guess, the first guest on your live. So that's a fantastic feeling for me too. So thank you.
cool. All right, guys. Well, Vince, everyone, have a good weekend. A lot of good movies out. So hopefully you guys go see at least some of them. And have a good weekend, okay? All right, guys. Vince, have a good
Bye.
one.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.